Hey guys, it's me, Alicia Jake, and today we'll be looking at hand sewing and how to make your very own mask. So without any further ado, follow along at home and let's get started. Okay, so to start, let's go over our materials. We have our fabric. I chose blue. You can choose whatever you want. We also have our needle and thread and a pair of scissors. Fun fact, those are my mom's kitchen scissors because I'm at my parents' house and this is all we have. I also have a grocery bag made out of the same fabric, so now I match when I go to the grocery store because, it's the little things you gotta hold on to. So here we have our fabric. You're going to match up the sides right here on this curve. The curve is important because it helps to fit to your face. So we're going to sew along this edge right here. So make sure it's all matched up and perfect and even. Hopefully I can just talk today. It's always a struggle to talk. You ever feel that? I do, on a daily basis. Anyway, you're going to tie a knot in your thread. I do it around my fingers. Other people just tie it. I don't know. People just do a knot. Okay, it's a knot like that. Okay, and then you're going to stick your needle in through the fabric. Make sure it's all lined up again, because it will shift during the process. So it's probably better if we get a pin and put that pin in there to hold it all together. Mine's purple because it's my favorite color. So, gotta live by the purple, die by the purple. Everything is purple except the fabric. Don't ask me why. Anyway, so you're going to stick your needle in through there. Make sure it's all good. Make sure everything's flowing perfectly. You're gonna want to poke it in about a ½ inch. Like give yourself a ½ inch seam line, ½ inch away from every side of the fabric into that corner. And you're just gonna poke it through and keep going. Make that seam. This was actually the first stitch that my grandmother ever taught me when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And it was the only stitch I knew until I was like 18 or something when I took my first sewing class in college. I did not know, this was the only way that I knew how to sew for years. Just floating my needle through, making that same stitch over and over again. That was the only thing that I could do for a very, very ridiculously long time. So we're just going to keep doing that and go all the way across that curve. We're going to speed it up a little bit for you. Okay, so when you're done getting through that curve and you've straightened everything out, make sure everything's flat, all the seams are flat, all the stitches are flat. You're going to tie a knot at the very end. I like to just wrap my thread around the needle and then just pull it through like that. To me it's easier than, I don't know. And then I like to do it again just to make sure that it's super secure and it's not going to come undone. Just like that. And then you're just gonna cut it, clip it, and that's that. Now, as we're going to see that seam right there? You want to make sure that all of your stitches are very small so you get that seam like that. But now there's like a bunch of bunching in the middle, and we don't want that. It'll feel very uncomfortable on your face. So what we're going to do is we're going to clip it. So you're going to go through the curves where it bunches up, and you're just going to cut off a little triangle of fabric like that. And this is why we don't use mom's kitchen scissors. We use fabric scissors because the fabric is going to bend like that, and the scissors are just going to eat it. It's very irritating. I wish I had my actual fabric scissors because this would not happen with fabric scissors. And so you're just going to clip along every single curve like that so it will lay nice and flat once you open it up again. You do this with a lot of curves and a lot of corners. You'll just clip them so there's a bunch of bunching. You see, there's still like I feel like an excess of fabric in the middle, so I'm just gonna clip off the ends of it so there's not so much fabric. And you might be asking yourself, Alicia, then why would you have like gone in so far for the seam allowance? And the answer to that is because, I don't know, needles and thread. That's the way I did it, okay? So that's the way we're going to continue doing it. I don't know. But anyway, now it's a nice seam, and now it's not going to feel uncomfortable on my face. See that? It's beautiful. So now we're going to take these scraps. We'll save them for later. Stuff a pillow with them. Not just those. I have a lot of fabric scraps that I stuff pillows with. Anyway, so we're going to do the same thing to the reversible fabric side. Just gonna line them up, do it exactly the same way that we did before. And I'm gonna do it off camera because, you already watched me. You know how it goes. Like, it's the same thing. You're not gonna get lost. It'll be fine. So now that we've done that, we're going to match up the inside and the outside together, right sides together, so the wrong sides are facing outward like this. And I've already done one side of it, so it's like that. So there's a seam right there, so that when you turn it inside out, it will be inside out and not just two pieces of fabric that are not together, So we're going to do the exact same thing to the top side, right along this edge here. So what you're going to do is, again, things are just easier with pins. So you're going to put pins right along the curves, right where it'll get, I think, most difficult to maintain that perfect alignment that we have right there going on with the fabric. I'm just going to use 2 pins because it's a small piece of fabric. It's not going to move around that much. It will still move around, but not like a shirt would, I guess. I'm just going to sew right along this curve right here. You want to make sure you leave enough room for the loops that will go around your ears. I like to leave at least a 1/2 inch to a whole inch of room along that seam right there, so there's enough fabric for the loops to be able to go through. You'll see what I mean later on. Okay, and then when you're done with that, again, tie it off. Make sure everything's right and smooth. No crinkles in there, otherwise it'll just look and feel very weird. Okay, Okay, so now comes the kind of difficult-ish part where we turn it inside out. It's not hard, it's just like it's a little bit hard to get it going, but once you have it going, it's all good. It's not as hard as turning a loop, like when you make a string for like a spaghetti strap or something like that. Those are so difficult, I hate them. Anyway, so we're just gonna turn this inside out, just like this. It's gonna look kind of weird and a little frumpy and just like, how is this supposed to fit on a human face? But I promise it'll turn out all right because we're gonna do some top stitching. We'll get to that in a minute. So as you'll see right here, it's kind of, I guess, wishy-washy, where it doesn't really have a shape. It's just two pieces of fabric sewn together, you know? And so, yeah, you want to make sure that you have enough room for your ear loops is what we're doing here. Is we're just making sure that everything's like, it'll be able to bend in through so that the ear loops will be able to go in through there. So it looks like past me thought everything was fine, and that was all right. And so now we're just smoothing everything out, you want to make sure that all of the fabric is brought to the outside because we're going to sew it down. So like, see where I'm doing right here, where I'm pinching it together to make sure that it's all like right along the edge of the seam, like that. You want to press that down so that it will stay better as you're sewing along it, because we're going to top stitch it so that it will have a shape. Okay, so we've got our pin in so that all the curves will stay where they need to be. And we're just going to take our needle, and I like to poke it in through the seam so that we don't see the knot whenever I'm top stitching by hand. So I do it like this, where I just poke it in through the inside of the seam and pull it through. And then you're just going to do the exact same thing that you did when you were creating the seam. You're just going to float the needle through and poke it in and out and in and out. Make small little stitches so that it all holds together nicely. They don't have to be as small though as the actual seam was, because they're not holding a seam together. They're just, you know, placing everything down, making it lay flat so that it has a shape. Okay, and so once you've gone to the edge, you're going to start a back stitch where you poke it through right where the previous stitch ended. So see right here, I'll show you. You just poke it through right where that stitch ended and then pull it through so that it matches, so it's just a straight line. Like, I'm sure you've seen a hem, and this is what they used to do by hand before we had machines. And unfortunately, I didn't know how to use a machine until like my second year of university, when they taught us how to sew by machine. People had tried to teach me before, but I was just obtuse to the idea. I was just like, I don't know how these buttons work. So I don't know. Apparently I hated myself and I just refused to learn that way. And I did this for years. I would just sew by hand like this. And it would take for literally ever. So you're just going to keep doing this the whole way through, all the way till you get to the end. This is the most time consuming part, I think, although it really doesn't take that much time. Like, I think it took me like maybe 5-10 minutes to complete the whole of the top stitching, the top and bottom probably. It didn't take that long, but it was probably the most time consuming part of this project. Okay, so now we've got all the top stitching done, and we're gonna do the loops. I like using these thin hair ties because they have a lot of elasticity, but they still hold their shape. So you can put them over your ears and it's not gonna pull on your ears and make it painful, but it will still hold it in place. And they don't, you know, like how a lot of elastic things will just lose their shape and then it doesn't hold to your face anymore, like the old reusable ones, or disposable ones, sorry. So anyway, you're going to stick the loop through your holes right there, and you're just gonna loop it over so that it holds it in place. You're gonna pull it, so make sure that everything is tight and secure, and you're gonna make sure that when you're sewing it, you're sewing through the top layer and the other 2 layers that are within, so the seam right there. So you're gonna wanna make sure that it stays in place. And you're gonna do basically the same thing that you did to the top stitching bits. You're gonna just float your needle on through, and then you're gonna back stitch it so that it matches and that it looks, you know, relatively the same, pretty nice. And just make sure that it's secure so that it holds onto your face. And then you're going to do the exact same thing to the other one. And then you'll be done. And here we have our finished product. I think it looks pretty nice. It fits pretty well, I think. And thanks for watching.